How many moles of O2, how many O2 molecules, and how many O atoms are there in 40 grams of gaseous oxygen, in other words, of O2? What is a mole? It is an amount of substance which contains 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 particles. If we refer to a mole of atoms, we mean an amount of substance which contains that many atoms. But if we refer to a mole of molecules, we mean an amount of substance which contains that many molecules. What is the molar mass of oxygen? It is 16 grams per mole. What does this mean? This means that 1 mole of oxygen atoms would have a mass of 16 grams. But what then would be the mass of 1 mole of oxygen molecules? Would it also be 16 grams per mole? Of course not. Since 1 mole of oxygen atoms means 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 oxygen atoms, whereas 1 mole of oxygen molecules means 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 oxygen molecules, where each oxygen molecule consists of 2 oxygen atoms bonded together. So clearly, a whole mole of oxygen molecules cannot weigh the same as a mole of oxygen atoms. 1 mole of oxygen molecules will be 2 moles of oxygen atoms, since there are 2 atoms in every molecule of O2. Therefore, 1 mole of oxygen molecules, O2, must have double the mass as 1 mole oxygen atoms. So 1 mole oxygen molecules must have a mass of 32 grams. In other words, double 16. 16 times 2. We know that in the unit factor method, we rely on the fact that anything can be multiplied by 1, and also on the fact that 2 equivalent values divided by one another equals 1. 1 mole of oxygen molecules has a mass of 32 grams. These are equivalent values. Therefore, dividing one by the other equals 1. 1 mole oxygen molecules is 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 oxygen molecules. These two are synonyms. They mean the same thing. 1 mole oxygen molecules and 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 oxygen molecules are just 2 ways of saying the same thing. Therefore, 1 divided by the other equals 1. 1 mole oxygen atoms has a mass of 16 grams. We can see this from the periodic table. The molar mass of oxygen is 16 grams per mole. Therefore, dividing 1 mole oxygen by 16 grams equals 1. 1 mole oxygen atoms is 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 oxygen atoms. They are synonyms. They mean the same thing. Therefore, dividing one by the other equals 1. These are our questions. Let's begin with question A. How many moles of oxygen are in 40 grams of gaseous oxygen? Gaseous oxygen is just another way of saying O2. We know that the molar mass of oxygen is 16 grams per mole, meaning that 1 mole of O, in other words O atoms, has a mass of 16 grams. But of course we know that in an oxygen molecule there are 2 O atoms. That's why the formula is O2. And so a mole of O2 molecules will have a mass double that of a mole of O atoms. A mole of O2 molecules has a mass of 32 grams. Write the question in an equation form. Pause until you've done this. How many moles of oxygen are in 40 grams of oxygen? Now we need to multiply this by, in effect, 1. By a fraction where the numerator and denominator are equivalent, and so in effect the whole fraction is 1. The way we do this, which will be useful, is such that the unit in the information given will be cancelled out and the unit of the information required introduced. So you need to ask yourself now, how many moles oxygen, in other words, how many moles O2, is equivalent to what mass of O2? Pause this video until you have answered this yourself. 1 mole of O2 has a mass of 32 grams. Therefore, our final answer is 1,25 moles O2 is the number of moles O2 in 40 grams of O2. Question B. How many O2 molecules are there in 40 grams of O2? Notice this is not the same question as what you were asked just now. In A, you were asked how many moles of O2 were in 40 grams. Now you are asked how many molecules of O2. A mole and a molecule are not the same thing. What is a molecule? A molecule of oxygen consists of 2 oxygen atoms covalently bonded to one another. This is 1 molecule of O2. I cannot draw you 1 mole of O2 molecules because that is a huge number of O2 molecules. I would be drawing and drawing and drawing for the rest of my life, and even then I wouldn't be able to draw enough. Why? Because a mole is 6,02 times 10 to the power 23. So 1 mole oxygen molecules is a group of this many O2 molecules. Now this is a very, very large number. Remember that multiplying by 10 to the power something shifts the comma that many times to the right, 23 times to the right, which we can also write as having another 21 zeros after the 602. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. This is the number of molecules in just 1 mole of O2 molecules. How can we express this number? That's 1,000,000. There we have another 1,000,000. Another 1,000,000. 602,000 million molecules makes up 1 mole of molecules. A huge, huge number. You can see that 1 molecule and 1 mole molecules is not the same thing. So this question is different from the previous. What do we already know? We know from the periodic table that a mole of O2 molecules has a mass of 32 grams. How do we know that? We take the value on the periodic table, the molar mass of O, and multiply it by 2 to get the molar mass of O2. And we know that a mole of O2 consists of 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 O2. Write the question in an equation form. Pause the video until you have done this. How many molecules O2 equals 40 grams O2? Notice that writing it as how many O2 molecules or writing it as how many molecules O2 makes no difference. Now, to solve this problem, we need to multiply this by a factor which is equal to 1 because the top and bottom of the fraction are equivalent to one another. What should the unit of the bottom of the fraction be so as to be able to cancel the information given? And what should the unit of the top of this fraction be so as to introduce the unit required in the question? Pause this video until you've done this yourself. Now you need to ask yourself, what number of oxygen molecules is equivalent to what mass of oxygen? Pause until you've answered this. 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 oxygen molecules is equivalent to 32 grams of O2. Since both of these two refer to 1 mole of O2, multiply these by one another and then re-pause the video. This is the answer you should have got. 7,52 times 10 to the power 23 molecules O2. This is a huge number. Imagine if you were to shift this comma 23 spaces. You will end up with a very large number. That's because a huge number of molecules O2 are needed to make even the small mass, 40 grams of O2, because each molecule is very, very, very light. Question C. How many O atoms are found in 40 grams of oxygen O2? Notice this is not the same question as what we've just been asked. We were asked how many O2 molecules. Now we're being asked how many O atoms. An O atom is not the same thing as an O2 molecule. An O2 molecule has twice as many O atoms in it as an O atom. Now, from our previous question, we saw that this is the number of O2 molecules that you find in 40 grams of O2. So can you see the answer of how many O atoms there would be? We know that in every O2 molecule there are 2 O atoms. So how many O atoms would there be in 7,52 times 10 to the power 23 O2 molecules? Try and answer this yourself. Only then should you replay the video. Clearly there must be double as many O atoms as there are O2 molecules. And so there must be 1,5 times 10 to the power 24 O atoms. Let's solve this another way. We know that 1 mole of O atoms has a mass of 16 grams. We see this on the periodic table. We know that 1 mole of O2 molecules has a mass of double that, since there are 2 O atoms in every 1 O2 molecule. So the molar mass of O2 is 32 grams. We know that in 1 mole of O atoms there are 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 O atoms, and in 1 mole of O2 molecules there are that same number of O2 molecules, but an O atom and an O2 molecule are not the same thing. There are double as many O atoms in an O2 molecule as there are in just free atoms. Now, 1 mole of O2 molecules can be written in each of these ways. 1 mole of O2 molecules is 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 O2 molecules. It is also 2 moles of O atoms. In other words, it is 2 times 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 O atoms. Let's write this question in an equation form. Pause the video until you've done this. How many atoms of O? Notice we could have written this O at the beginning rather. How many O atoms, it doesn't matter, is equal to 40 grams of O2. Our next step is to multiply this by a factor. What should this factor's units be so as to be helpful? Pause until you've answered this yourself. We must be able to cancel away the units of the information given, and we must introduce the unit asked for. Notice, atoms O and O atoms are the same thing. Next, ask yourself, how many O atoms are equivalent to how many grams of O2? Pause until you've answered this. 2 times 6,02 times 10 to the power 23 O atoms is equivalent to 32 grams O2. This is because each of these quantities refers to 1 mole of O2, which is the same thing as 2 moles of O. 2 moles of O is 2 groups of 6,02 times 10 to the power 23. In other words, 2 times 6,02 times 10 to the power 23. 2 moles of O has a mass of 2 times O's molar mass. 2 times 16. 2 times 16 is 32. Find the answer to this question using your calculator. Pause the video until you have it. Do you see that we find the same answer using this method as what we got earlier? 1,5 times 10 to the power 24 atoms O, a huge number, double the number of molecules O2 that we found, because there are 2 O atoms in every molecule of O2.